About 6 years ago, Ms. Heard brought these disturbing criminal acts against me.
This is Johnny Depp, in his own voice, breaking down exactly what happened to him. And when you hear those words, what comes to mind? Scandal, controversy, a man's career imploding on live television. But here's the part that the mainstream media never wanted you to focus on. The accusations were false. A court of law examined the evidence, heard the recordings, reviewed the testimony, and found them to be defamatory lies. The verdict was unanimous. Johnny Depp was innocent, and yet,
your lies have been exposed to the world multiple times, right?
I haven't lied about anything I've been here to say.
that wasn't Amber protecting herself. That wasn't someone defending against false accusations. That was someone backed into a corner, knowing the truth was collapsing around them, still clinging to a narrative that nobody with eyes and ears believed anymore. But here's what the mainstream media completely buried. The reason Amber did this. The motive that connects to something so much bigger than a celebrity breakup. The thing that connects to Epstein, to Ellen DeGeneres, to an entire network designed to protect powerful people at any cost. Johnny Depp is finally exposing the truth about Amber Heard, about her secret connection with Epstein, and about why she dragged him through one of the most publicized celebrity trials of all time. This isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't speculation. This is a timeline. This is a pattern. This is a system, a machine designed to protect some people and destroy others, all while the world watches the exact same machine operate with completely different rules depending on whether you're useful to it or threatening to it. Welcome back to the channel. What you're about to hear is a story that connects two of the biggest trials of the last 5 years: an unexplained disappearance, a network so powerful it can destroy a man's entire life in a matter of weeks, and then mysteriously protect someone else in the exact same ecosystem. This is not a story about celebrity drama. This is a story about how institutional power operates when nobody's watching closely enough. Let's establish the baseline first, because to understand why Johnny Depp was destroyed, you have to understand who he was before the destruction happened. 6 years ago, actually, let's be more precise. Before May 2016, Johnny Depp was not just successful. He wasn't just famous. He was at a level of cultural dominance that very few human beings ever achieve in a single lifetime. The Pirates of the Caribbean franchise alone had generated billions of dollars. He had been nominated for Academy Awards. He had collaborated with world-class directors. He had built a 4-decade career on a foundation of genuine artistic credibility mixed with blockbuster commercial success. That's a combination that almost never happens. More importantly than all of that, he was independent. He wasn't controlled by a single studio. He wasn't trapped in a franchise deal that owned him. He was in a position where he could say no to things. And according to multiple sources and documents connected to the Epstein investigation, he had been invited into circles that he could have joined, and he said no. Now, we need to be very clear about what we actually know versus what we're inferring. According to references found in Epstein-connected documents, Johnny Depp's name appears in relation to an invitation to Epstein's private island. The sources vary on the exact details, but the consistent thread is this: an invitation was extended, and by every available account, Depp declined. There is no verified evidence that Johnny Depp ever set foot on that island. There is no documentation suggesting he participated in any of the activities that happened there. What the documents show is an invitation. What they do not show is acceptance, engagement, or attendance. But someone in a position of power apparently took that refusal personally.
When you're asked to resign from a film you're doing because of something that is merely a bunch of kind of vowels and consonants floating in the air, yeah, you feel a bit boycott.
Think about what that actually means. Think about what it means to be asked to resign from your own franchise. Not fired, not terminated in the traditional sense. Asked to resign. There's a psychological component to that choice of language. It's not the studio cutting you loose. It's you supposedly choosing to step away. It's designed to make it look voluntary, like you made the decision, when the reality is you were given an ultimatum. And the speed at which it happened, listen to his tone in that clip. He's not performing shock. He's not acting out emotion for the camera. This is a man genuinely stunned by the surreal reality of what was being done to him. One day, you're one of the biggest stars in the world. The next day, you're being asked to step away from the franchise that defined your career, the franchise that made you a global icon, the franchise that studios were competing to keep you in. But it gets worse, because this wasn't a slow, cautious distancing like Hollywood typically does. This was coordinated. This was simultaneous. Multiple studios at the exact same time, all making the same decision, all abandoning him, all cutting him loose, all delisting projects he was attached to. Some of the people who distanced themselves from me knew the truth from day one. Now listen to what he's actually saying there. He's not talking about people who got fooled by headlines. He's not talking about studio executives who genuinely believed the accusations based on media coverage. He's talking about people inside his circle, his agent, directors he'd worked with for decades, producers who had made millions off his name, people who had direct access to him, people who could have asked him directly, people who knew the full context. And those people knew he was innocent. From day one, they knew the accusations were false. They knew the timeline didn't add up. They knew everything, and they abandoned him anyway. That's not cowardice. That's coordination. That's a message being sent. And the message is clear. If you refuse to play along, we will show you exactly what happens. The financial consequences were immediate and catastrophic. His business manager, Joel Mandel, testified in court about the scale of Depp's financial infrastructure. We're talking about multiple properties, staff, spending that had grown to extraordinary levels because it was supported by the income of arguably the most bankable actor on the planet. That income could support that lifestyle because the work kept coming, the studios kept calling, the projects kept flowing. The spending levels had grown very, very, very large and required that level of incredibly high income to be maintained. And when it dropped off, the disconnect became untenable. Let that sink in. The spending didn't need to be excessive anymore. The lifestyle didn't need to continue at that level. But the system that had been built, the structure that had been created over decades, that structure required continuous high-income flow to sustain itself. When the work stopped, when the studios dropped him, when the contracts were simultaneously canceled, the entire financial structure of his life collapsed. And the number attached to this financial collapse? $600 million. That's the estimated figure in lost potential earnings. Not money that was stolen from him. Not money he lost in a bad investment or a risky business decision. Money that was systematically, surgically removed from his life through coordinated contract cancellations. All timed to land when he was already at his most vulnerable. This is financial warfare dressed up in business language. This is institutional power being weaponized against a single person with precision and coordination. But the financial devastation was only half of it. The psychological dimension was equally calculated. Former associates were brought in to testify against him. People he had worked with for decades. His agent of 30 years was called to the stand by the other side. Think about what that does to a person's sense of reality. The people you built your career with, the people you trusted with your livelihood and your reputation. Suddenly, they're positioned against you in open court, on the other side, testifying for your accuser. Bruce Witkin, someone who claimed to be a friend of nearly 40 years, also testified. He described seeing bruises and difficult moments. But here's what's important. Even he acknowledged he never witnessed actual abuse. Never. Not once. But his presence on the witness list sent a message. The message was, we can reach everyone around you. Nobody is safe. Everyone can be turned. I was very honest with him and said, you've got to stop doing this. This is hurting you. His agent of 30 years on the stand for the other side. This is the psychological warfare dimension that people don't talk about enough. It's not just about money. It's not just about reputation. It's about deliberately isolating someone by turning their own support system against them. It's about making them question whether anyone was ever actually on their side. Now, here's where the story pivots to something much bigger than just one actor's career implosion. Because at the exact same time that Johnny Depp was being publicly destroyed in the most visible way possible, something else was happening in the background that almost nobody was paying attention to. In April 2022, the world was captivated by what would become the most televised trial in recent memory. The Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial dominated not just television, but every social media platform. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Telegram, Netflix. Every single streaming service had clips. Every single algorithm was pushing content related to this trial. Social media feeds were flooded. News cycles were dominated. For weeks, it was the only story that mattered. The trial was broadcast broadcast, it was recorded, it was available to the entire world in real time. You could watch it live, you could clip it, you could share it, you could debate it. It was completely transparent and completely accessible. But during that same exact period, another significant trial was taking place. A trial that, according to investigative sources, was directly connected to the Depp Heard case in ways that nobody was connecting publicly. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. The Depp Heard trial was televised extensively, with countless clips and videos circulating on the internet. In contrast, the Maxwell-Epstein trial was not allowed to be recorded or broadcast. There was no footage, no videos, and very few mentions in the media. Let that contrast sink in. Two trials happening simultaneously. One broadcast to billions of people. One shrouded in near total secrecy. One generating millions of clips, discussions, debates, theories. One generating almost no media attention at all. Now, officially, the difference in coverage is explained through the mechanics of federal versus state courtrooms. Federal trials have stricter rules about cameras and recording. That's true, but the dramatic disparity in media attention goes way beyond just the technical rules about courtroom recording. This was a deliberate choice. Media outlets chose which trial to cover extensively. Algorithms chose which clips to promote. Social media platforms chose which conversations to amplify. And the trial that was buried? The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman who ran Epstein's entire operation. The woman who brought the women to Epstein. The woman whose testimony could expose names connected to Epstein's network. Powerful names. Names in entertainment, in media, in politics, in finance. That's the trial that was silenced. Meanwhile, the trial that was broadcast to the entire world, a trial involving an actress and an actor, with allegations of domestic violence that would later be proven false. That's the trial that consumed every screen, every headline, every conversation. According to sources close to Johnny Depp, this wasn't coincidence. This was strategy. This was deliberate. And the strategy had a specific purpose. Here's what we need to understand about how power actually works when it's operating at the highest levels. When you're in a position where you have something to hide, something so serious that exposure would destroy you, you don't try to suppress the truth directly. Direct suppression is too obvious. It draws attention. It creates suspicion. Instead, you create a distraction. You create something so massive, so scandalous, so emotionally charged, so visually compelling that it consumes the attention of the entire media landscape. You make sure that everyone is watching one thing so intently that they literally cannot pay attention to something else happening at the same time. It's a technique that's been used throughout history. While one story dominates, another story dies in silence. And according to sources close to Johnny Depp, this is exactly what happened with the Maxwell trial and the Depp Heard trial. If the Maxwell files revealed too many names at once, if the depositions exposed too many connections between Epstein's network and powerful people in entertainment, the system protecting those people would be threatened. The leverage would be lost. The leverage that Epstein apparently used to control people, to keep them in line, that leverage would become public. So what do? You need a distraction. You need something so big, so visible, so controversial that it pulls all the cameras, all the algorithms, all the media attention away from what's actually threatening you. You need Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. And here's where Amber's alleged role in this story becomes relevant. According to investigative accounts circulating through documentary evidence and research communities, Amber Heard had connections to organizations and networks allegedly linked to Epstein's ecosystem. We're talking about UN Women, organizations connected to the World Economic Forum, foundations involved in promoting social justice causes that were allegedly intertwined with the same networks Epstein operated within. Her public image, carefully cultivated over years, positioned her as a #MeToo advocate, a survivor, someone speaking truth to power. But according to sources examining her career trajectory and her connections, this image may have been part of a larger orchestrated narrative. Now, we have to be extremely precise here. Amber Heard has not been charged with any crime in connection with Epstein. That's a legal fact that we have to state clearly. The connections I'm describing are circumstantial. They're based on investigative research, not on criminal charges or court-proven facts. But the connections exist, the timeline exists, and the question that nobody in mainstream media was asking at the time was, why would someone with alleged connections to Epstein's network be given such a massive platform during the Maxwell trial? Why would the industry protect her narrative so carefully while the Maxwell depositions were happening, unless the narrative itself was the protection?
I just want Johnny to leave me alone. I just want him to leave me alone. I've said that for years now, and I thought he would after 2020.
Objection, non-responsive.
That moment right there, that wasn't just emotional testimony, that was performance on a global stage. While she was saying those words, while she was getting sympathy from the public and from media outlets, the things she was allegedly afraid of, the Maxwell files, the Epstein connections, the exposure of networks and names, that was happening in a courtroom without cameras, without recording, without the public watching. If Amber was afraid of being implicated in the Maxwell files, if her name appearing in those depositions would have been catastrophic to her freedom and her future, then creating the biggest celebrity scandal in modern history would solve that problem completely. All the cameras would be on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. All the headlines would be about their trial. All the trending topics would be about their accusations and counter-accusations. The Maxwell trial, that would fade into background noise. It would be buried under an avalanche of celebrity gossip. The distraction worked. Millions of people watched Depp versus Heard. Few paid attention to Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. And according to the evidence that's emerged in the public record, Amber Heard's name never appeared in the Epstein files that were eventually released. Or did it? Now we need to expand the scope of this story, because there's another figure that connects all of this together. A figure whose name appears not once, not twice, but over 1,000 times in Epstein-connected materials. A figure who built one of the most recognizable brands in American daytime television. A figure who spent nearly 2 decades telling the world to be kind. Ellen DeGeneres. Her show ran from 2003 to 2022. Think about that timeline. Nearly 2 decades of consistent, daily access to mainstream American culture. 2 decades of influence over what America considered safe, wholesome, kind, and good. She was Oprah adjacent in terms of cultural influence. A figure who could launch books, tank products, define what mainstream America considered acceptable. And her name appears over 1,000 times in Epstein-connected materials. Now, context matters here. Appearing in Epstein's files doesn't automatically constitute evidence of wrongdoing. That's important to state. Many names appear across those documents for varying reasons. Some as potential victims, some as social connections, some through third-party references. The sheer scale of Epstein's network means that proximity doesn't automatically equal participation. But when you look at what else is happening around Ellen's name in the broader Epstein conversation, when you examine the timeline of her show ending, the circumstances around her departure from the United States, the pattern starts to take shape. It starts to raise serious questions. In May 2022, Ellen announced she was ending her show. The official explanation? She said she felt creatively challenged. She said it was time to move on. She said she wanted to explore new projects and new creative directions. But then something interesting happened. Right as the Maxwell depositions were becoming public, right as the Epstein files were being prepared for release, right as investigators were mapping out the full extent of Epstein's network, Ellen quietly announced she was leaving the United States. Not taking a break, not a sabbatical, leaving permanently.
DeGeneres and her wife, Portia de Rossi, have reportedly fled the US, bound for the UK, after Donald Trump's landslide victory. Numerous publications are reporting the couple have left the United States permanently.
The official explanation was that she didn't like Donald Trump, that the political climate made America feel inhospitable, that she was exercising her right as a citizen to move to a country with a different political system. And that explanation was accepted by much of mainstream media without scrutiny, without follow-up, without asking the obvious questions. But let's examine the actual timeline here. The DOJ had just announced 3 months before Ellen's departure that they were completing their review of the Epstein files. They were preparing to release a full client list along with thousands of emails and court documents. This was not a theoretical threat. This was an actual imminent event. The files were coming, the names were coming, the exposure was coming. 3 months after that announcement, Ellen left the country permanently. She and her wife boarded a plane to England. They listed her Montecito mansion on the real estate market. They told friends and associates that they were never coming back. And the media accepted the Trump explanation without asking why. If she was so opposed to Trump, she didn't leave during his presidency. Why she waited until just before the files were released. Why the timing was so perfectly synchronized with the moment of maximum exposure. Now, we need to be clear. Ellen DeGeneres has not been charged with any crime in connection with the Epstein files. That's an important legal fact. But the timing of her departure, the way she disappeared from public life, the permanence of her stated intention never to return, these are things that investigators and the public are sitting with. These are questions that demand answers. Here's what makes this story so deeply disturbing when you hold all the pieces together and look at the actual pattern. On one side of the equation, you have Johnny Depp, a man who, according to multiple sources and documentary evidence, refused Epstein's invitation. A man who apparently said no to something he was supposed to say yes to. And what happened to him? The entertainment industry, studios, agencies, publicists, media media outlets spent years systematically destroying him. They stripped him of his franchise. They coordinated his financial ruin. They brought his own friends and colleagues to testify against him. They created a media echo chamber around his name that painted him as a monster despite the complete absence of convictions or credible evidence.
That's what you want to do. Ultimately, you've taken everything. You want my blood? Take it. Have my blood. And then she said, no. And then I said, look, if you're not going to take it, you want it. I know you want it. That's all I've got left. Take it.
That's the emotional reality of what was done to him. A man brought to complete psychological and financial depletion by an industry that turned on him not for anything he actually did, but apparently for what he refused to do. On the other side of the equation, you have a figure, potentially multiple figures, whose names are woven through the Epstein files, whose connections to the network are documented, whose proximity to the ecosystem is undeniable.
I don't think about Hollywood. I don't have much further need for Hollywood myself.
Johnny Depp said those words after being vindicated, after the trial proved he was innocent, after the court confirmed that Amber's allegations were defamatory. And notice what he's saying. He's not bitter, he's not angry in a traditional sense. He's expressing something deeper, clarity, understanding. He's saying that the system that did this to him is not one he needs to belong to anymore. Because here's what the machine couldn't take from him: the audience. His supporters never turned. The public saw through the coordinated destruction. And when the trial ended, when the verdict came back, it wasn't just a legal result. It was a public acknowledgement of something that millions of people had already concluded on their own. But meanwhile, the figures allegedly connected to Epstein's network, the industry that weaponized every tool at its disposal against a man who said no, that same industry appeared to have very little interest in asking hard questions about the people who may have been deeply embedded in exactly the network Depp refused to join. That asymmetry is not accidental. That is the system operating exactly as it was designed to operate. Punish those who won't participate, protect those who will, destroy those who might threaten exposure, and if necessary, create a distraction so massive that the public can't see what's actually happening. But here's what's happening now that changes everything. The files are being released. The DOJ is moving. The Maxwell depositions are public. The names are coming out. Thousands of emails are being examined. Court documents that were sealed are becoming accessible. And the person who built her entire public identity around the phrase, "be kind," the person whose name appears over 1,000 times in Epstein-connected materials, is in rural England with her mansion on the market, telling friends she's never coming back. The timing is too precise to be coincidence. The coordination is too obvious to be random. The pattern is too clear to be dismissed. Johnny Depp refused, and they showed him exactly what that refusal costs: $600 million in lost earnings. His franchise, his inner circle, his mental health, his reputation for years. The full weight of institutional power pointed at his life like a weapon. Amber Heard allegedly had connections to the network, and the industry protected her, gave her platforms, allowed her narrative to dominate, while Maxwell's trial was silenced. Ellen DeGeneres' name appears over 1,000 times in Epstein materials, and when the moment came that exposure was imminent, she ran. This is what the system looks like when you understand how it actually operates. This is what happens when you refuse to play along. This is what happens when you're useful to the machine. This is what happens when you know something that threatens the machine. The public is watching. The audience that stood by Johnny Depp when the industry abandoned him, that same audience is now paying attention to what's being revealed. They're connecting dots that the media hoped would stay disconnected. They're asking questions that the official narratives don't answer. And the machine is running out of time to control the story. Because once people understand the pattern, once they see how the system protects some and destroys others, once they recognize the coordination and the asymmetry, it becomes impossible to unsee. It becomes impossible to go back to accepting the official explanations. It becomes impossible to trust the institutions that allowed this to happen. The files are coming. The names are being read. The truth is becoming unavoidable. Comment below. Do you think Johnny Depp was systematically punished for refusing to be part of Epstein's world? Do you think Amber Heard deliberately used the trial as a distraction from Maxwell's case? Do you think the contrast between what happened to Johnny, what the industry allowed around Ellen, and what we're learning about the connections tells us something fundamental about who the machine was really built to protect? Because if you do, then you already know the answer. The system protects its own. It destroys anyone who won't play along, and it's running out of places to hide,